Charlotte Stewart, it is lovely to meet you and fantastic to be zooming into your beautiful home in Napa Valley.
Thank you. It is a great day here. I got home, it was raining, and now the sun is out, and it's an absolutely beautiful day.
I was going to say, looking over your vast list of credits, we've got a TV fave, of course, as Miss Eva Beadle from Little House on the Prairie, Beth Briggs from Twin Peaks, and let's not forget Mary from that cult classic now, Eraserhead.
Eraserhead.
You sometimes must pinch yourself thinking, gee, how lucky did I get to have so many wonderful roles under my belt?
You are absolutely right, and it's pure luck. I have no idea. It feels like I just fell into a dream. I had no idea that I was going to be an actress. I lived on a farm in Northern California. And when I graduated from high school, all my friends were going away to college. And I wasn't a very good student. I couldn't go to college. So I saw an advertisement on the back of Teen magazine for the Pasadena Playhouse. And I thought, Playhouse? That sounds like a lot of fun. So I sent for an application. I got accepted, and then I told my mother.
I think you were brought up on a peach farm, weren't you, in Yuba in California?
Yuba City, California. My father was a rancher. He grew peaches and prunes and almonds. That's where I played, in the orchards all my life.
Your first gig on television was on the Loretta Young Show. Incredible.
Isn't that just amazing? And she was amazing to be with. I mean, she was a classic movie star.
Oh, honey, what happened to your day?
You couldn't take your eyes off her, but she ruled that set with an iron fist. She directed the episode that I was in with her. She played my mother on the first episode. And I guess she liked me because she had me back for 2 more episodes with different actors. But that was my start. And at the time I did that first episode, West Side Story had just started shooting on the same lot. So I got to go on the sound stage of the cast of West Side Story and watch them shoot that wonderful dance scene in the garage where they all jump up and touch the roof. It was just amazing.
Loretta Young, of course, being one of those great movie stars who made the transition to television. Likewise with Fred MacMurray, of course, who went on to star in My Three Sons, and that was 1961. And that was another great gig that you had.
I did 3 episodes of My Three Sons, playing different characters on each episode. And I married the oldest son, Tim Considine.
In your memoir, Little House in the Hollywood Hills, you write about how you had this mad crush on him when you first kind of walked onto the set, and that you set out to make him fall in love with you as well. How did that play out?
No. Would I ever do that? It worked, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and Tim and I, even after we divorced, we stayed friends for many, many years. He just unfortunately passed away last year.
Yes.
But we stayed in touch. We were good friends all along.
So you dated for 4 years. You married in 1965. And I got to say, reading your book, you were quite the party goers, weren't you?
Well, his mother was a Pantages of the Pantages Theater. He was well involved in Hollywood his whole life. So any place we went, we got, we were photographed, and his mother used to loan me her mink coat to go to Grauman's Chinese Theater. I never had a mink coat in my whole life, but his mother did. And so we were quite the glamour, nobody does that anymore. But, it was really fun back in the 60s when there was still old Hollywood and you could kind of fit into that whole niche. It was fun.
Do you think, Charlotte, maybe what happened to your marriage, do you think it was simply that you burnt yourselves out with too much partying and too much fun and too much of that Hollywood razzle-dazzle?
I think that was part of it. The other part was we went on our honeymoon, and while we were gone, his manager demanded on My Three Sons that he direct half the shows when we got back, and they said no. So we got back, and Tim was off the show. He was off My Three Sons. And he didn't work again for quite a long time. And he went into a very severe depression. And I didn't know how to handle it. it was just too awkward. We ended up splitting up, and I said, I've got to go to work, and I'm sorry, because it was a very hard time for Tim.
And then he passed away. So what happened to Tim, Charlotte?
I think just a little less than a year ago that he passed away. It was an accident in his home. And every time I would go back to Los Angeles for work or for whatever, people wanted to see me there, I would go by and see Tim and his wife, Willie. We were very good friends and have a really good time. I was there every Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. He invited me. And it was shocking to hear that he took a fall and died. And I miss him very much. He was a lovely man. I love him very much. And I loved his family too.
In the late 60s, you had this incredible opportunity of working with Elvis Presley in a movie called Speedway. And he told you something really interesting about his mum.
Yeah, he was so sweet. He took my hand and he told me about Gladys, his mother. And when he was in the Army and they wouldn't let him go home to see his mother when she was ill. And it broke his heart. It was really devastating. So we're sitting there on the set all alone, holding my hand. And I thought, oh my God, Elvis is holding my hand.
Is this true?
Yeah.
That Elvis apologized because at some point in time he thought, I think this movie's going to be a dud?
He said, all I've really wanted to do is act in a serious movie, but they keep coming up and giving me these ridiculous, I sing a song that I never remember again. And, he didn't like doing it at all. He wanted to do some serious acting. And, with Colonel Parker and whoever was making his movies at the time, they just wanted to sell Elvis and sell Elvis and sell Elvis. So, he was kind of tied to it.
Did you get the feeling that he knew he was a commodity, just basically being sold out and doing these things
Yes.
he really in his heart didn't want to do?
That's exactly right. He really didn't like doing that. That's why I think maybe later when he kind of broke free of all that and he was doing one event after another, he was in his prime then, on stage with his sparkly, with the outfit with the chic and, all that. He just loved that. He loved that. But he didn't like those silly movies,
One of the first movies you did was The Slender Thread with Sidney Poitier and Anne Bancroft, and you had a small role in that. Do you have many memories of that?
Hardly any, because The Slender Thread is a telephone line, and that I played a telephone operator who was the slender thread between a suicide prevention person and somebody who wanted to commit suicide, Anne Bancroft and Sidney Poitier. Now, I had no idea when I did the movie that that's who those people were. I did one-day event at a telephone company where they put the headphones on me and I plugged a few lines in. I had no idea that it was with Anne Bancroft and Sidney Poitier, but that was my first movie.
You made a movie called Doctor, You Gotta Be Kidding, with the wonderful Sandra.
Oh my God.
Did you get to meet Sandra?
No, I never got to meet her. I never even saw her there. All my scenes were completely, without her in it.
Yes. You did get to commune with the wonderful Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart in a movie called Cheyenne Social Club.
Cheyenne Social Club. Oh my God, that made my parents so happy. I got to be in a scene with Jimmy Stewart. He was so sweet. I adored him. Henry Fonda, I don't think I said more than 2 words to. Oh gosh, what he was kind of distant. It was kind of hard to reach out to him. But Jimmy Stewart, we were on a closed set, and he had his portable trailer brought into the set, and he would sit on the doorstep and play the accordion. He had an accordion that he played, and you could hear it all over the soundstage. My life has just been one little dream after another, and I'm still living that dream. I just got back from Simi Valley, California, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Little House on the Prairie, where we had 30,000 people there. And we worked for 3 days nonstop, meeting people. But it was the most amazing event to experience. All these people came from all over the world.
Before you became Miss Beadle on Little House on the Prairie, you appeared in the first to air episode of The Waltons in what was a really poignant role.
It was a very sad story of parents of a deaf child who were uneducated, and they didn't understand what was wrong with their child. And the mother felt, after watching the Waltons family and their love and their joy, that if she left the child with them, that the child would have a chance for a real life. Yeah, that was a very, very sad story that turned out, it turned out fine, because they did help her, and they helped her understand that she could learn sign language.
As you were doing that, as you were shooting that particular episode of The Waltons, you're also making Eraserhead, the David Lynch movie. And how in the dickens did you do it?
I don't know. I really don't know. It was amazing. David Lynch, the director of Eraserhead, only liked to work after midnight. So we shot every night, which was fine, unless I had a job during the day, which I got with the Waltons. So this one particular day that I was shooting the wrap-up episode on the Waltons, I had been all night on Eraserhead, and I got in there. I could hardly think of, well, first of all, if you knew what I looked like on Eraserhead, yes, it was absolutely nothing like the character on the Waltons. So I had to adapt from one character to another in a matter of hours with no sleep whatsoever. And I remember sitting on the sofa with Michael Landon, which my scene was with her, trying to think of, what the hell am I supposed to say now? What am I? I mean, I just looked so bewildered, but it worked.
And into the mix, let's add Ralph Waite, of course, as John Walton Sr., and you two wound up having a little bit of a romance. Talk about a busy girl.
Oh my God, yes. I met Ralph as I walked into the set that morning, and he ended up going home with me that night. Of course, I couldn't let anybody on the set know that. I mean, all these children, it was, oh my God, it was our secret. But you know what? Ralph and I became very good friends. Following that, the affair was not long, but I loved Ralph. He was such a good person and such a great man. And of course, that was before he became a minister. Maybe I sent him into the religious life. I don't know.
So 1974 rolls along, and you weren't worn out enough to accept the role of Miss Eva Beadle on Little House on the Prairie. And the funniest thing is, you didn't have a clue in the world who Laura Ingalls Wilder was, or the whole Little House on the Prairie thing that was just such a huge literary hit before, of course, it came to the screen in the television series.
I was so shocked. I walked into this interview, and there's Michael Landon. And all I could think to myself was, this is huge. This is huge. I don't even know what this is. I'd never heard of Little House on the Prairie. So they said, are you ready to read? And I said, may I sit behind your desk, to the producer? And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at Michael, and all the men in the room started kind of laughing. And I went, quiet. I think that's what got me the part.
And now the thing is, Charlotte, too, everyone seems to have an opinion of Michael Landon. What is unanimous is that he was an absolute powerhouse, an amazing talent who just had this knack to be able to have all the balls in the air at the one time. But then there were some cast members like Karen Grassley, who I've chatted with. I know Kevin Pagan spoke out about it, feeling as though they were kind of underpaid, and that tarnished or dimmed their view.
Oh, you know what? Give me a break. Give me a break. So we didn't make mega bucks. We had a steady job, and that was, I so appreciated that. I don't know what their complaint was, and I'm sorry they had any complaints at all. I never did. I had 4 years of steady work, and many years after that of residuals, which was, wonderful, wonderful. And he was such a talent. He wrote good stories. He based them all on the original book. And then he expanded. Of course, you have to if you're going to be doing, 24 shows a year for 9 years. You've got to go somewhere with it. He was such a talent, and I so appreciated him. So, I had no complaints. I'll tell you that.
And I remember Alison Arngrim telling me how he often worked commando, no underwear, because he was aware of his female fan base. But then, Charlotte, correct me if I'm wrong, did I not read in your book, you also went, as they say, commando? Is that right?
Commando. Yes, I did. I did, because it was so hot. However, one of those days, there was a wasp, and it got up my skirt, and I'm wearing a wool skirt and 3 petticoats. And I'm trying to get the bug out of my skirt, and I can't lift my skirt because I'm naked underneath. So I ran behind the schoolhouse with the wardrobe lady. We finally got it out. But yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah.
4 years for you was kind of your contract. And you knew the day was coming when Miss Beadle wouldn't be there anymore. It must have been a real jolt for you when that last day eventually rolled around.
I thought, they're going to have a little celebration. They're going to have a little party or something to wish me well. No, it was like, cut, move.
Next. You made so many great friends on that show. And of course, you're still in touch with so many of them that are still with us, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I'm on the road with the whole cast of Little House on the Prairie. I start again next Thursday. We're going to Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
And I just got back from the 50th anniversary in Simi Valley. Yeah, my whole next year is planned out already.
Michael Landon's death and pancreatic cancer is just so unspeakably awful. Did you get to chat with him in his last days, or were you able to see?
No, I didn't. I had no involvement with him after I left the show. My mother died of pancreatic cancer, so I knew how strenuous it was going to be for him to do anything. And no, I made no attempt to reach out to him at all. That's a time of privacy. But I know I was so glad to hear that Melissa Gilbert was able to be with him in those last days, and that meant a lot to me. Some people think that he was this walking egomaniac. He knew he was good looking. He strutted around quite a bit, and he enjoyed it. And God bless him for it. I enjoyed it too, to tell you the truth. We loved Pa, and the children loved him, and it was so obvious. I'm so grateful that the children got to get as much of Michael's life as he was able to handle. Then he went on and did another television show.
Another great TV role, and one for which you are just so loved all around the world, is Beth Briggs, of course, Twin Peaks, which reunited you with the great David Lynch. Did you love Twin Peaks?
I loved it. It was so much fun, and reunited me also with Jack Nance. Jack had become my best friend since we did Eraserhead, and so many wonderful people on Twin Peaks. We had a really good time doing that. I wish they would put that back on the air. It's such a good series.
David Lynch, though, is just such an amazing man. I look at Jack Nance, and there too, Charlotte, another immeasurable talent, wonderful in Eraserhead, of course, and then, of course, Twin Peaks and so many other things that he did. But I was really saddened to read that he had so many struggles. There was the booze, there was the depression, and he died so young. What was he, like 53 or something?
Yeah, at 54 years old. Yeah, he was living alone. But, Jack was so dear. He was such a sweet person. But, he had a problem. And it took him. Sadly, way too soon.
Well, you write in your memoir too, Little House in the Hollywood Hills, how after Little House you wound up there it is. It is an absolute ripper read. You are so candid, Charlotte, which is just incredible, especially candid about things that people often shy away from being very honest about. For instance, you were just talking about Jack then and his struggles. And you had your own, and you write so very honestly about them, about how in the 70s, of course, everybody was partying, but then into the equation comes booze and cocaine, and your life can sometimes go a bit haywire. And you write that it happened for you. What for you, Charlotte, was like your lowest ebb where you thought, nah, it's got to change. I've got to do something about this.
Yeah, it did. It did. I hit a wall. I literally hit a wall. I couldn't keep up anymore, and I knew I had to help. And so I put myself into a hospital program. I went into a 6-week program. I knew I had to get into lockdown. Lockdown. I was that bad. And thank God, because, I came out of there and I stayed sober for 26 years. And then my husband died and I went out again. And I went out for almost 10 years. And now I'm back. It'll be 2 years in May that I'm sober again. And I'm working very hard. I go to a meeting every day here in Napa. And it's a problem. If you're out there, if you're watching this and you're listening to my story, keep in mind, it's not your fault. It's an addiction. Alcohol is an addiction. And once you're in it, it's really hard to get out, and look for help. Alcoholics Anonymous is a wonderful place to go. And I have many friends there, so thank God for it. But I'm not ashamed of it. It's an illness, it's an illness.
Great advice. You also wrote about, and it might seem unfathomable to some people, but like literally at your lowest ebb, living on vodka and hot dogs, and you were kind of homeless for a bit.
Yeah, that's what it came to.
Yeah.
But now I've got a wonderful, I have you're in my studio here. I work every day. I try to be creative every day. I make my Beadle bags, which I sell online and all. And in fact, I got home from this last trip and I have almost 50 orders to fill. I'm going to be sewing for the rest of the year. Oh, I make them myself. Yeah, I've got one right here. You see, that's a Beadle bag with a picture of Miss Beadle on it. Yeah. So that's what I make. I make them every day.
And I love this story of this incredible friendship. It might seem unlikely to some, but you and Jim Morrison, 1970, and you went on this amazing 5-day road trip together. Tell me how that came about.
I had a clothing store called the Liquid Butterfly, and Jim used to come in. So we became friends, and he used to take me down the street to the local bars, and we would drink together, and we became drinking buddies. And then he came by one day and he said, I got to get out of town. He was under arrest. He had been arrested back east for indecent exposure, I think, and he was facing trial. And he wanted to get away for a while. So we jumped in his car and he didn't even know where he wanted to go. So I directed him up Highway 1. So we went up to Solvang. We went to, oh gosh, I can't even remember all the places we went. We just drove and drove and drove and stopped at bars and hotels and pool halls. And we spent 4 days on the road. I have a whole movie of our trip of him driving up Pacific Coast Highway. And then he dropped me off back at my store and I never saw him again.
Within
6 months, he was dead. I was devastated. I just broke down sobbing. I couldn't stop crying. And, it wasn't like I expected any kind of relationship with Jim. He was already married, and we had a friendship with benefits. That's all it was. I know that sounds awfully crass, but remember it was the 70s.
Yeah,
and things were a little bit looser then.
Someone else you became friendly with is, and I mean, her story is remarkable, Joni Mitchell.
I met Joan. She had just moved from Canada. I was friends with her manager, Elliot Roberts. And Elliot said, Joni's coming to town and she doesn't know anybody and she doesn't drive. Can you take over? And I said, absolutely, because we both lived in Laurel Canyon,
Yeah.
And so I would pick her up. We'd go to, the Crescendo. We'd go to, Troubadour or whatever, wherever she wanted to go. And, she just didn't know anybody. She didn't know what to do. And it was a friendship that I will never forget. That
Oh,
was such a special time.
she underwent the horrors of that brain aneurysm and they wrote her off. And look at her rebound. It is something, Charlotte, that is almost miraculous, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but that's Joan. She is miraculous. I'm not surprised at all, to have gone through something that horrendous and survive. And now she is here. She got the Academy Award. She's singing it both sides now on the Academy
I
Awards.
know,
Oh my
she's
God.
flourishing.
Absolutely a survivor. Absolutely. God bless her.
Now, you got to work with Rock Hudson in Macmillan and Wife. What was it like working opposite the fabulous Rock?
I didn't have any scenes with him, but when I arrived on the set, he went and grabbed a chair, pulled up a chair for me. So, I'd have some place to sit. He was just charming. He was a sweetheart. But I didn't have a scene with him. It was just such a thrill, to meet him. I've been so lucky to meet, Henry Fonda, James Stewart, all these wonderful actors that were part of my childhood, really.
Oh, yeah.
I never thought I would ever meet, let alone work with.
Oh, and then, of course, one or two fabulous romances along the way. I mean, let's not forget Richard Dreyfuss, who you said just had the most wonderful sense of humor, a gorgeous man.
We had so much fun together. He's such a troublemaker, you know that? He was staying at a recovery place. I don't mean a recovery from alcohol or something, but I think he had some health problems. And in Santa Monica, he was at a live-in place, and he said, would you bring me some, I forget what he wanted. He wanted orange juice. He wanted something. So I stopped by there, and we're walking through the living room, and there's this big staircase. And at the top of the staircase is Gloria, what's the famous actress, Gloria
Swanson.
Gloria Swanson at the top of the stairs. And she goes, Richard, who have you there? And he says, this is Charlotte. Who is she? I mean, oh my God. I couldn't believe it.
Then on the other hand, Charlotte, and you don't need to say a word, there was Bill Murray.
If I never see him again, that will be fine. No, I don't know. I haven't seen him since. I don't want to say anything bad about him, but I can't say anything good about him either. Okay?
No, but I tell you what is good, and that is how you met your third husband, Michael Santos, which to me is a beautiful story, a man that you'd known decades before.
Yeah, well, his sister married my brother. So I had known Michael for over 30 years when we bumped into each other again. And he showed up at my door with a puppy in his arms. Oh. He never went home, and we're together still. His name, and he's my best friend and always will be.
What was it like writing the book, Charlotte? Was there ever a moment where you thought, oh, am I saying too much about certain people, or am I being too revealing about myself? Did you have a line anywhere that you drew?
Well, when Andy Dembski was my writing partner, he's a newspaper man here in Napa, or he was, and he suggested that I write a book, and I went, are you crazy? I barely got out of high school. I can't write a book. He said, no. Don't write a book, tell stories. So I did. I sat down and I just started to tell one story after another. And that's what this book is. It's a series of stories. And it just happens that a lot of the stories are kind of interesting.
And to think 1960, you make your first appearance on the Loretta Young show. So doing the quick math, 64 years in showbiz, Charlotte. Now that is an absolute wow.
I know. I just turned 83 years old.
83 years young. Let me correct you.
Oh,
you look
good.
$1 million. We need to know your secret.
Stay busy, work every day, do something that you love to do, be creative. I walk every day, except right now it's a little cold outside. Walk every day, enjoy your life, do something you love. And I guess that's how I got through this life on such a good scale.
I know I speak on behalf of your many fans from all over the world. You are a treasure. an international treasure.
Oh,
Great fun,
thank you.
big heart, and very kind. And thank you for being so kind with your time.
God bless you. Thank you. God bless you.